can find me on Twitter at FantasyNav. And riding shotgun with me, as always, is my dude, Mike Holland. Mike, how's it going tonight?
Well, my horns lost today, so could start at a worse time, but it's all good. I'm looking forward to the slate tomorrow. Yeah, just looking forward to recouping some money from college football today. So you can find me at my handle on Twitter at mcholland34. I am also a contributor on at Bacon and Egg Show, where we talk about those said Longhorns, and you can get our insight into ranting fans and how they feel after two tough losses.
So, anyone who has made it a tradition to tune into the DFS Pawn Shop, thank you for your patronage. And you are well accustomed to Mike coming in grumpy on Saturday nights because of a terrible Horns defeat. So, no reason to break tradition tonight as we turn the page from college and head into week 6 of the NFL. Anyone who is familiar with the show knows how we get down. Anyone who's new, thanks for checking us out. At the DFS Pawn Shop, we kind of cruise around the entire store. We take a look at the showcase games. We peruse the sales rack. We always make it a point to at least peek at the bargain bin. And we help you answer maybe the $1 million question while you are at the pawn shop. Is this item legit or is it counterfeit? And that allows you to walk away with the stacks and the core plays that you need to get the most bang for your buck in week 6. Mike, we have first shorter slate of the year. We've got a few teams on bye. We've got the London game to contend with. So now we're looking at a 10-gamer this week. Anything stand out to you kind of big picture or strategy-wise in terms of how you're going to approach week 6?
Yeah, 10 games. It's a lot less people in my player pool this week, so that's always nice. I'm just going to really try to figure out what we're going to do here with all the chalk, because when you pull up your DraftKings screen here and look at who to roster, there are a bunch of IRs and Qs as well as C19s. And so we've entered that portion of the year where that bargain bin is looking very tempting, but it's going to be some guys that you probably don't want to touch there, and you just want to make sure that you get on the guys that are going to really, really be a bargain. So I'm looking forward to the slate. I'm always a fan of a smaller slate, just less options to really have to go through. So, I think there's going to be a couple of games that are going to be popular. And I'm looking at some of these mid-tier games that might not be as popular, and we'll kind of talk about those as trying to get some pivot off of the more chalkier action. So, looking forward to having a good run at this thing this week and see if we can't take home $1 million.
Yeah, at least personally, I'm a bit of a bigger fan of these smaller slates, right? I don't like the kind of tiny afternoon ones or the Thanksgiving ones where it's 3 or 4 games, whatever it might be. But here in this kind of 8 to 10 game range, I think it sort of sets up for us to do a lot of damage, right? You can get a pretty clear picture of the situations that you want to exploit, but also you have to fight off less randomness of the guy that fired up Sam Darnold the week that he had 2 rushing touchdowns, right? So I do think it sort of narrows the variance range therein and makes kind of these more sound plays a bit more likely to make it through to the top. So with that, we will dive right in. Like I mentioned at the top, we head to the showcase first. It is that pretty backlit glass case right there in the back of the store. It's where all of the high ticket items are, and it's where we want to focus our time and our attention, as this will be central to the builds and the lineups for the week. So right off the top, easily the highest game total on the week. We are looking at Kansas City and the Washington football team. This is a 1:00 game. Right now we're looking at 54.5 point total. It has gone down by half a point, seemingly to do with some questionable players. KC is sitting at a 7-point favorite, which gives them a 30.75 implied total. The football team sitting at 23.75. So, Mike, we've talked over the last weeks about this Kansas City defense playing like ass. Marcus Grant, they like to refer to them, as the Kansas City Cheeks. So if you look at all of the advanced statistics, you look at DVOA, Kansas City's right there at the bottom. And this Washington football team was supposed to be a vaunted defense, and they're kind of getting beat up left and right. So my first question, do you think this game actually goes over, breaks 60 maybe? And if so, is this where you're starting with your builds?
I do think it's going to go over because nobody can stop anyone on the other team. So that only makes sense to bet the under, right? But yeah, I guess this week we're talking about our boy Taylor Heineke. I guess that's a thing. And I'm not really happy about it, but I guess I'll have to do it. 5,800 on DraftKings. I mean, he's going to be playing from behind. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to get with the masses and write a few lineups out there. And personally, I just want to say to the Washington football team defense that they have cost me some pretty good lineups in the last few weeks. This is pretty pathetic the way they performed. I thought up front they would be much stronger, but man, they are just terrible at all three levels. And so, of course, that makes everyone on the Chiefs in play, even though their price tags are super expensive. So for me, it's Pat Mahomes, and I want to stack him with Travis Kelce just to get that price savings because Tyreek Hill at 8,500. It's a bit pricey. He's, got that questionable tag as well. It looks like he's probably going to go. But that Patty Mahomes and Travis Kelce stack about 15-3 when you put them together. So that's probably where I'm going to get most of my exposure to in this game. I just don't know who to pair Heineke with. I mean, obviously you can pair him with McLaurin, which a lot of people are going to do. But that's just going to be super popular. So I don't really want to go that route. Where are you at with this on the quarterbacks?
Yeah, I've got a similar point of view. Heineke is flatly too cheap. I mean, I was all systems go on firing him off with McLaurin, right? That stack coming in a little less than 13K, really gives you a lot of flexibility through the rest of your build. But I get that the football team is optimistic, but with this injury consideration for McLaurin coming in, I mean, it does give me some pause. The pivot, off of McLaurin is going to be a super chalky Ricky Seals Jones, which just terrifies me. I mean, the pricing in general for both of the tight ends in this game, it feels like it's significantly too cheap, right? Seals Jones is essentially min priced. Kelsey's sitting there at 7K. So I think we might see like a lot of two tight end builds, right? With the point total on this game, players are going to want to find a way to get pieces from this game into their lineup, and to counterbalance the cost of the Kansas City side, they get a min-priced RSJ in there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more of these two tight end builds out there. Is that a line that you ever feel comfortable taking?
If it's something like Kelsey, yeah, I don't mind. One of the elite tight ends, I don't mind flexing a really cheap tight end if there's really a stack that I want to get in there. But I would say I'd probably only do that maybe less than 5% of the time. So one route that I do want to go and to be different in this game is I want to pair Heineke with Antonio Gibson and someone like either a Humphreys or a Carter in this game. I've been paying close attention this year, and it just seems like the quarterback, running back, receiver stack is not as popular because obviously the correlation there. But just how involved running backs are in the receiving game these days. The other week, 2 weeks ago, I think it was Dallas. It was Dak, Cooper, and Zeke all got there. So I just think it's an interesting way to go and a way to be different. So I think that's kind of the way I'm going to attack this side. So I'm not with the masses with the McLaurin stack here.
Yeah, I love the Gibson play this week. I don't know if I'm going to run him back with Heineke. I mean, it's a fair point in terms of a way to get a lot of exposure to all of the Washington scoring in a pretty unique build, right? But even just onto himself, Gibson looks like an awesome play, right? All of the the projections and tools that I use out there have him floating right around like 4 or 5% ownership. This is a guy that got 80% of the opportunities out of the backfield last week. Even though J.D. McKissic was involved and on the field, Gibson was still their leading receiver out of the running back room. So I think there's a lot of different outs and ways for Gibson to get there, and to get him at sub 5% in what is maybe going to be the chalkiest game of the week 6 slate. It feels like it opens up a lot of leverage for you, you know?
No, yeah, I can see that. The reason why I bring up the quarterback, running back, receiver stack is just because it'll be different. It's a way to, get away from the masses here, because I feel like a lot of people are going to want to take that $5,800 savings with Heineke, put him with McLaurin, and then run it back with the Kelsey or a Hill. And that's how you just start your builds. And so one way to counter, if this game does go off, and one way to counter that, if Heineke hits Gibson for a touchdown, or if Heineke has a great game, the game script is there for him to make the comeback. Gibson's super involved in the passing game, and he has a decent game running. I mean, all these guys can kind of get there in different types of ways. It's just a way to kind of be different than your other lineups that you're going to see out here. With Carter, though, I think it's interesting. I mean, he's min-priced as well. He saw some targets last game. It's got to be a little bit popular, I would think, just because of game environment. I mean, obviously not crazy chalk, but some people are going to go this route. I don't mind if I'm not really stacking this game, then I don't mind him as a one-off or Humphreys as a one-off, just to get some of that piece of that pie. Because if it does go under and one of these guys does score, then that's just going to set you apart from the field.
Yeah, definitely would. I do want to get your thoughts on the KC side with how expensive the marquee pieces for the Kansas City Cheeks are this week. Do you think that sort of counterbalances some presumed pretty high ownership, or do you think that with those regardless of the price tag, you can expect them to carry substantial ownership in a game with this high a total?
No, I think they're going to carry substantial ownership because there are some running backs and some receivers and even tight ends that are super cheap this week with injuries and everything we kind of talked about earlier. So these guys are going to be more popular, even though their price, I like the discount here, and I just hate I hate playing tight end. So if I can just go get a tight end that I know is going to get 7 for 118 and a touchdown, then I'm just going to go ahead and lock that in and take my money. Hill, a little bit scarier just because that's a big price tag to pay. But yeah, he can break the slate at that price point, because I think his ownership would be a little more depressed than what you would see, Kelsey at. So
yeah, I'm seeing a lot of chatter out there about just hitting the lock button on Kelsey in the 150 max and then making your decisions elsewhere. And Hill, I mean, he is carrying that lofty price tag and he's coming in a little up. So might be a way to get that over the top kind of highest upside on the in the game exposure at a little bit depressed ownership. So right there with you. And with that, we will move on to our second game. Before we do, we got Joe in the chat saying, "What's up, gang? What's up, Joe? Thanks for spending another Saturday night with us." Keep those questions coming in. Let us know what you're thinking about the things we're talking about, and we will move on to our second game in the showcase. We are looking at the Chargers against the Baltimore Ravens, another 1:00 game. The rare back-to-back big game totals in the early part of the slate. So 1:00, we're looking at a even 51-point total. This has come down a little bit. It opened at 51.5. The Ravens are the ones that were on the wrong side of that slide. They opened at a 3-point favorite there at home, but they have now slid down to 2.5. Total of 26.75, with the Chargers carrying a 24.25 point implied total. So, Mike, everyone is swooning over both of these quarterbacks, right? Lamar Jackson looks to have taken a pretty big leap in his passing ability, at least in that Monday night game against the Colts, where they stopped covering the Ravens' best pass catchers in the second half. And obviously we spent some time talking about Justin Herbert and his prolific scoring over the last few weeks. He really looks like a legit MVP candidate, right? So Are either of these guys the QBs that you're looking to build around, or do you have other spots in this game that you're really catching your eye?
Yeah, I think both you're able to build around, but I think obviously Lamar's always a cash lock for me in this price point. But I think now he's really in play in tournaments, just due to the game environment, the total, how close the line is here. So 7,400 for a guy that can run for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, yeah, give me that. And then the question is, how do you stack them? Yeah, I mean, Brown and Andrews is the way you stack them. So they're still both under 6K. Brown's coming in at 5,900. Andrews coming in at 5,200. Andrews kind of solves that tight end issue that we kind of talk about all the time. So, there's kind of a more viable stack. Brown coming up to 6K. He's got big playability as long as he secures the catch. He could break out. But then again, neither one of these guys could do anything, and Lamar could just vulture all the touchdowns, and then you would want to play him naked. So, I'm going to have some of both where I play Lamar naked on this slate in particular, which I don't typically like to do. And then I'll have some Brown and Andrews. It is going to be popular, but it's 7,400. It's just too cheap not to play him. So, for the other side of this, I mean, Eckler, 7,900. It's a little bit interesting. I think as his price goes up, I think his ownership's going to go down a little bit here, almost 8K. So that's almost elite level territory for a running back. So, might have some there. And then as far as the Williams news, it looks like he might play. His price tag is out of control. So I'm looking at Allen more at 6,400, and then that tight end spot with Cook at 3,200.
Man, there is a ton to cover on this game. We could probably go an hour on just this one matchup in particular. The headline of all of it is exactly what you opened with. Lamar Jackson is just flatly too cheap. He's going to be super chalky. Where I disagree a little bit, I don't have the discipline or the presence of mind to ever break from the habits that I've established in DFS. So I will not be running out a naked quarterback, even if it's. But for the first time in recent memory, the stacking partners are super clear, right? Andrews, like you said, he all of a sudden gives us kind of a viable middle of the road option at the tight end possession, right? Forever and ever, it's been you pay up for Kelsey, or you punch with whomever is the cheapest guy that's going to see snaps.
RSJ.
Both of those happen to be in the same game that we just talked about a few minutes ago. So I do think Mandrews offers kind of an interesting line on the approach to the slate in general, because I do think most of the ownership is going to fall in that Kansas City Washington game. But Hollywood Brown, I mean, he's back. He's here, right? His only game this year without a touchdown catch is that Week 3 game against Detroit, where he had 3 of them in his hands and just put them on the turf, right? So he is very much so the focal point of this downfield passing game and a offense that likes to go downfield often. Sammy Watkins has already been ruled out. We will see the debut of Rashad Bateman. So with that, I want to get your thoughts both on Bateman in a vacuum, but we actually had someone jump in on Twitter and ask us a question. So over these last 2 games, for someone who's looking to punt at the wide receiver position, are you feeling better about Bateman, or are you feeling better about Carter?
Oh boy, this is that time of the year, right? For me, because of the game environment, and I think that Kansas City is going to get out to a big lead. I do like Carter more. I'm not mad at Bateman, I guess. If you want to play some of these more expensive, stars and scrub lineups, you're going to have to take a stand on some of these cheaper receivers. But how about someone like Prochet or even Devin Duvernay? For me, it's just a little bit tougher just because Lamar is just – it can just eliminate the receiver factor as a whole. So I think with Heineke, it's like, hey, he's going to be playing comeback. I don't think we live in any multiverse that sees them getting up 17 to 0. But for me, I think I'm looking at Carter. That's just where I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I'd never really feel all that great clicking the button on a min price receiver unless and until I'm absolutely 150 maxing on something. But of the two, it's Carter, and it's more about Bateman for me. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this kid as a long term prospect. This is his first game as, at best, the third or fourth receiving option in an offense that rarely supports two receivers. So he certainly has the skill set to get behind someone and get into the box, but you're counting on a lot of things going the right way for you in order to really get paid off on that punt play. So with you on the Carter side, switching over to the Chargers, I was actually really surprised looking at the ownership projections. Obviously, Mike Williams is coming off of an insane game last week against Cleveland. Um, he is a little nicked up. The most recent reporting is that while he is questionable, the team is optimistic. They're expecting him to play, barring any sort of setback. Obviously, this is an early game, so we'll have that news and those updates, well ahead of time as we're finishing out our builds tomorrow morning. But despite all of that murkiness, Keenan Allen is significantly less expensive than Mike Williams, and he's projected to be rostered somewhere between 7 and 9% of builds out there. I mean, kind of feels like the play of the week. I mean, what are your thoughts on it, Mike?
Yeah, I mean that's way too cheap for Keenan Allen and what he can do. Under 10%. I mean, yeah, sign me up. I want to be double the field on that. It seems like, yeah. But this Mike Williams news obviously is a big thing. If he's out for whatever somehow, then yeah, you just lock in Keenan Allen at 3 or 4 times that amount. If he's in, it makes me want to. I mean, that price tag is crazy. I don't see anyone clicking that price tag, even if you're game log watching. I mean, that is. I mean, you're talking. He's only $400 less than Tyreek Hill. So,
I mean, the league leader in receiving touchdowns, though.
Yeah, no, I know that, but I'm just saying, man. Like it's still Mike Williams,
Yeah.
At
Actually,
some point,
that's a perfectly fair point, right? Recency bias is a real thing, right? It feels like the 5 weeks of tape that we've seen on the 2020 is how it's always been. Prior to those 5 weeks, Mike Williams was maybe one of the biggest disappointments at the wide receiver position in recent memory, right?
yeah.
So yeah,
I just think
that. Go ahead.
Oh no, that price tag. I don't know a lot of people that want to pay $8,100 for Mike Williams, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't. And if that's the case, then sign me up for more Allen in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, the key word in your statement is people that want to pay that amount of money. I promise you, there are plenty of lineups being built and spit out of optimizers that have Mike Williams in there, right? Because he's given a return relative to even that inflated price tag. To your point a moment ago, if he does suffer that setback pregame and is in fact ruled out, I mean, I would move Allen's ownership to 18-20%. Is that too conservative in
No, yeah, I think it would move to about 20% for sure. For me, it would move to 40%, and then I can just have an early day and enjoy my family the rest of the night. So
yeah. They finally swung the pendulum back and put some of these big games on the early part of the slate. The other thing that I sort of have in general here is following your lead on the quarterback, running back, wide receiver triple stack. This is the game where I'm looking for it. For whatever reason, despite the last 3 weeks looking like he's an absolute extraterrestrial and legitimate MVP candidate, Justin Herbert's still projected to be around 5 or 6% ownership, right? So in a game where they are going to score, they're going to need to find unique and creative ways to score and use every corner of their playbook. And in an offense where maybe one of, at least I won't say maybe the best receiver, one of their better receiving options is the running back coming out from the backfield. We saw Jonathan Taylor exploit and take advantage of this over aggressive Ravens front on Monday night. I think that we can see a lot of that from Austin Eckler. And if you look at it, obviously Eckler is going to carry a lot of ownership, but the combination of him alongside Herbert, alongside Keenan Allen, I think that gives you a really unique texture to your build. Run back with a Hollywood or a Mark Andrews, and you're also not really killing yourself from a pricing standpoint. Talk me out of this line, or tell me that I might have actually come up with a good idea.
Well, I'd say it's a good idea, but then that means you can't play Lamar Jackson. So now I got to talk you off of it, because in this game, I want Lamar Jackson. And I'm just going to take a stand on it. Yeah, we'll have a lineup or two with Herbert. Yes, but you're right. If I'm going to play that lineup, then I probably want to have Eckler and Allen in it. So, that I'm going to have builds that are the trifecta there, just to create unique lineups and ways to take these large field tournaments. I mean, you've got to get creative. You can't just stack you look at the winning lineups these days, and it goes against a lot of, and we're talking like millionaire lineups and the 300K to first, and those lineups are so unique in how they're built. It's almost like you're just like, I mean, most of these people are just throwing darts anyway. So, that's such a large field to go against. But you look at those lineups and you kind of have to break down each tournament that you're playing a little bit differently. So I think, you kind of got to take some risk factors here in different types of tournaments. And for me, I'm just not going to fade Lamar Jackson to play Justin Herbert, I guess, is the best way to describe my thoughts on Herbert for this week.
Yeah, I totally get it, and it might be an overcorrection in my mind, but on these shorter slates, it feels like the ownership is a bit more centralized, right? So prioritizing a way to get different, to leverage off of who should be one of, if not the chalkiest quarterback. I don't know. Maybe I've got the blinders on, but that's where I'm going. I almost feel like I'm on the other side. I'm going to have more Herbert, but I'll have a handful of builds with Lamar in there.
No, absolutely. And what I'm saying is, if I'm playing like a millionaire maker, I'd play Herbert with a triple, the running back and receiver. If I'm playing, I play a lot of these like $15, 2K to first, where there's only 300, 400 lineups, then I'm going to go ahead and just stick Lamar Jackson in there, because you don't play against all these crazy lineups. And so, for that reason, like Herbert stacks, give them to me in the large field, the mini max, stuff like that. I try to centralize and focus a lot of my time in that $10, $15, $20 range where it's 3 max and things like that. So a lot of my quarterback plays in those are ones that are a little bit safer. They play a little more similar to like cash game style than large field GPP style. And that's why I think Lamar Jackson just kind of fits for those type of builds.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. And before we shift off of this game, we've got our guy Paul coming into the chat with a question. He wants to know, looking at the last 2 games that we covered, what are your thoughts on 2 tight end builds with Kelsey and Andrews?
Yeah, I'm not mad at it. It's a way to be different, for sure. I would play Lamar Jackson with Andrews and Kelsey. No problem at all. And I'd probably want to play like a Gibson and maybe a Carter from that game to kind of run it back. And I wouldn't be afraid to put, because of the salary saving, putting someone like Tyreek Hill in there as well, because Lamar can help offset Mahomes if he goes nuts. And just in general, Mahomes' price tag is so crazy that Kelsey can get there and destroy the tight ends on just volume alone without scoring, whereas Hill can really set it off with scoring. So, they can get there without Mahomes essentially going completely like berserk. Lamar can help. Even if he does, Lamar can help offset that with his rushing upside. If he scores 2 rushing touchdowns, Mahomes is going to have to go for 40. Interesting stuff there. I don't mind it.
Right on, Paul. Well, it sounds like you've got a different line that you're taking on this one, and we obviously know that in the GPP game that can offer leverage on the field. So Definitely keep getting questions coming in. We will continue on down the line here in the showcase. Before we do, we've got our guy Garrison chiming in. Always appreciate the kind words. Definitely having a lot of fun on the pawn shop on a Saturday night. Thank you for spending some time with us. And our third game in the showcase is the Dallas Cowboys and the New England Patriots. We're now sliding back into the afternoon window as the Cowboys so often are. We're looking at a 425 game with a 50.5 total. It's actually one of the highest risers on the week. This one opened at 48.5, so it's added even 2 points. Dallas is currently laying 3.5 points. They're largely the beneficiary of that movement. They opened as a 2-point favorite, but now they're sitting again at 3.5. That leaves them at an even 27-point implied total, with the Patriots sitting at 23.5. So at least for me, Mike, week one, it's been a little less let Dak cook than we might have thought coming out of that Tampa Bay game, right? Dallas is really heavily featuring the ground game. We've seen better than 30 carries or 30 attempts on the ground in each of the last 3 games. And on the New England side, they're really sticking to their heavy tight end sets. So where are you looking at this one, Mike?
Yeah, I'm not that interested in this game, honestly. I mean, I'm looking at this game as a scenario where I just take a one-off. A lot of these players are, still pretty cheap for this type of game environment. I just think your Belichick boys, though, usually like to muck up the game and really try to manage this game, especially with their rookie quarterback. In large field GPPs, which we just got done talking about, though, I will have 1 or 2 Mac Jones stacks with like a Jacoby Myers or like a Kendrick Bourne, just to get real weird and really try to outplay the field and get ahead of the field. So other than that, though, I'm not going to have much exposure to either quarterback. It's probably the first week I haven't really had much exposure to Prescott. I think how I'm treating Dallas is I'm just going to pluck like a Cooper or a CeeDee Lamb on some lineups here, just play them as one-offs. The Elliott thing where, he's kind of banged up right now. His price is starting to, creep back up again. Still 7,100 for his talent, but you still got the Vulture Pollard at 5,600 right behind him. So there's just so many options on Dallas, and it's just not my favorite game. There's some games in you kind of the next tier that if they go over, I would like to kind of leapfrog if people are playing this game. So that's just kind of my initial thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I've got a similar point of view. The biggest thing that gives me pause on this more than anything is, I mean, we're looking at Dak Prescott well below 5% ownership, right? So you caught me smirking when you were qualifying about your mini max or your milli maker entries. I thought you were going to say you'd fire up a couple of Dak stacks there. You went even weirder. Mac Jones and all of his like 18.5 attempts per game or whatever it is going to be in Mike's milli maker winner. So I mean, this one's super tricky because there's not really a like super clean line that you can take on this game, right? The roles aren't all that repetitive week in and week out. Other than we're seeing an increasing trend on dependency on the ground game. So we know historically Bill Belichick's game plan is one that is really isolating and looking to diffuse the best offensive player of their opponent. In your book, is that game plan going to feature trying to team, or you think that they're going to try to focus their attention on Dak?
I think they're going to try to take away Dak in this game. He's been really good this year. So I think that's going to kind of be their focus there. It's just I don't really like playing offenses against Belichick. It's just not a fun thing to do. I know the total is going up on this game, but man, it's just like I'd rather just put my money somewhere else. And just to kind of nail that point again about getting weird on on Mac Jones, it's like if this game goes over and it's 31-21 Dallas, right? And Mac Jones has 3 touchdowns, because they get one early and then they have 2 cheap ones late, and he scores throws for 3 touchdowns and somehow hits that 300-yard bonus on the comeback, and 2 of them go to one of those guys, I mean, you're so far. I know it's the chances of that are real slim. I mean, you're talking a 2% chance that would happen, maybe. But if it does, you are so far ahead because they are so cheap, and that stack is with Bourne is less than 10K. I mean, you can go up and grab all the elite receivers and running backs that you want.
Mike Williams.
You know, exactly. So for this game in particular, I just want to get weird with it if I'm going to play anything from it. My favorite play of this game is probably going to be CD, though. He's just so talented, man. Like, his price. I think eventually he'll be, maybe by the end of the year, up into that 7,500 8K mark once he really starts to get rolling. So.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I do have a couple questions for you on the New England side of the ball. So it seems as though Damian Harris is a true game time decision. If he's out, are you looking more in the Ramondre Stevenson camp, or are you looking at their special teamer turned third down Brandon Bolden?
It's always fun to roster Brandon Bolden, right? I don't know. I've never done it actually, so I don't
feel so alive.
Yeah, seriously. 4,500 Stevenson. Man, it's just like I could probably place the mouse over the add button, but I don't know if I can actually like push the finger down on it. It just seems like this game could come down to New England needing to go to the passing game to try to keep up with Dallas. So it's just not for me. I can understand it, but I mean, really, what's his floor is just I don't know. It's just not for me, I guess. His floor versus his upside, I guess I should say. I don't see Ramondre Stevens having 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I guess someone can listen to this and go ahead and chalk it up and win $1 million, and we can look back at the tape later.
Yeah. No, I mean, given the game total that this is, I do kind of get that sense where there's probably going to be a one-off piece or two in a large field GPP winner from this game, in terms of not even really which piece it is, but more so like how someone gets there logically. That might be above my pay grade, right? The last piece that I wanted to get your thoughts on was the dude, Hunter Henry. It seems like he has clearly stepped into kind of this move tight end capacity that Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels really love. Over the last few weeks, he's continuing to see more and more involvement in the passing game. Last week specifically, he ran, I think it was like 23 or 24 routes comparatively to Jonnu Smith's 6. And he's sitting all the way down at $3,900. So at a position where we're probably going to see 80% of the ownership fall on 3 or 4 guys, maybe it's worth taking a look at a one-off dart on Henry.
Yeah, man, as soon as you rattle off all those stats and the targets and the routes run difference, you're going to see Jonnu Smith come up with 6 tomorrow. It just feels like that's just how it goes because Belichick doesn't care about targets and who's running routes, and he's just drawing up the best design to get his team in the best position to win. One week it could be, running back. Next week it could be receiver. Next week it could be tight end. So you just never know. I would rather spend that. I guess instead of playing I guess it's not quite a roulette with these two because it does seem like Henry is a little more involved. I would rather just spin down and pay for, like an RSJ, unfortunately, and really, really gamble. So that price savings, I think at the end of the day, when playing tight end, I'm either going to go way down in the dumpster or, we'll talk about another tight end later, but an Andrews and like a Hawkinson, that mid tier, or I'm just going to pay for Kelsey and just move on.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think the thing to really crystallize the sentiment is the only thing that you can count on from Bill Belichick is disappointment.
It's like the Spurs.
Good fundamentals, seriously. Solid passing.
Like Spurs, nobody likes to play Spurs chalk in NBA DFS, but this is the same thing with New England.
Yeah, I mean it's a fair point there. Plenty of comparisons, even outside of the DFS streets, between those two organizations. So definitely see the comp there. We will keep it moving on to the last game here in our showcase. It is featuring the Arizona Cardinals heading up to Ohio to play the Cleveland Browns, and we have yet again the $1 million question: legit or counterfeit? And we're going to ask this about our guy David Njoku in a offensive explosion last week. We saw him haul in all 7 of his targets for 149 yards. He looked really fast and really elusive in the open field, honestly. Converted one of those catches for a touchdown, so scored a little bit better than 30 points on DraftKings scoring. It feels to me like basically Baker's plan is to throw the ball to anyone not named Odell Beckham Jr. And last week that was David Njoku. So in your mind, Mike, Dave Njoku, legit, counterfeit?
Oh God, so counterfeit. Like, my goodness. I mean, the guy had a 30-point game. He's not even average, and that didn't even take his average to 10 fantasy points a game. like, that's how ridiculous that game was. No, yeah, and you know what? I got to admit, last week I was completely wrong about that game, and of course there was 5 billion points scored in that game, and I had 0 people in that game, all of my lineups combined. So congratulations to you, Cleveland. You really stuck it to me this time. But no, yeah, I mean, it's just not for me. I mean, they got plenty of tight ends, Bryant, Hooper. Like, it was just one of those days for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised even after this 30-point performance if we see David Njoku finish the season with about 30 points scoring. If you rolled the dice last week and you caught lightning in a bottle, congrats. Don't go chase that again because you will be disappointed. But hey, kudos to David Njoku for, I think this is actually his career best game. So live it up, my dude. Moving on to the rest of the game. Again, we're in the afternoon block. This is a 4:05 game. We're looking at a 48.5-point total. This one plummeted since the wagering market opened up. This one opened up at 54 points. It's now down 5.5 points to get to 48.5. And the Browns are currently favored by 3.5. So it leaves them with an implied total of 26. Arizona carrying 22.5. And this one is an absolute mess. We are looking at one of those late fall, windy Cleveland muck games that made Baker Mayfield look like absolute ass last year. On the Arizona side of the ball, Kyler Murray is dealing with a shoulder injury. We see Rodney Hudson has been ruled out of this game. I believe he's been placed on IR. So that really strong offensive line is now at least weakened. And everybody in Arizona has the cocoa. Head coach Cliff Kingsbury out. General manager out. Chandler Jones on the defensive side has been absolutely killing it. He's out. A lot of question marks, a lot of uncertainty in this game. How are you making sense of it, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I got to have a little bit of it. Just because Arizona's just been so good this year, and Kyler in general. I think to get different, though, I'm going to pair Murray with Hopkins. I know Murray may use his legs a little bit more this game. So, it's a super expensive stack. I mean, Murray being 7,900, Hopkins being 7,800. But it's a way to be completely different in this slate. As you saw last week, I don't know what happened last week in that game where they just went bonkers. I know the elements and the weather are there. This is just going to keep people off of this game. And I still don't believe in the Cleveland defense. I mean, they're just terrible. I don't care what kind of elements are being presented here. So, I do like that stack. I mean, I'm not mad if you go down to Kirk and play him with Murray. I'm not going to play roulette with Connor and Edmonds. I know Edmonds has the questionable tag. Even if he were to, for some reason, be out here, he's got the shoulder issue. I just don't know if I want to go to Connor. That's where I'm at on the Arizona side.
So on the Cleveland side, I want to know a little bit about the math and the projection that you work with. Kareem Hunt is probably going to be the chalkiest play on the board this week. Correct?
Absolutely.
So where are you forecasting his ownership, given that universal fact that the two of us have managed to find consensus on?
I don't think it's going to be as crazy as it would be in some weeks because there are going to be some plays down at the very, very bottom. He's kind of in that no man's land, that 6,200. So you're not breaking the bank to get him, but you're also, I mean, you're not really doing much to save any salary with that. He could bust. I mean, the odds of that I think are pretty low. He's a super safe cash play. I think he's going to be locked in cash easily. Large field tournaments, I want no part of it. And some of the smaller tournaments I'm going to play, I'm unfortunately going to have more than I probably really want. Because when things seem to be this good, it just like Kenneth Walker today with Michigan State, it just looked too good to be true, and it wasn't.
Turned right back into a pumpkin. Yeah, I mean, my model has him pushing 30% ownership. I think it has a lot to do with the kind of general consensus from the public is if Nick Chubb, were to ever miss games, Kareem Hunt immediately moves into the top 5 of the position. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at him to deliver like an Austin Eckler type of performance. So while $6,200 isn't offering a whole lot of relief, it's certainly a discount on that caliber of player. And of all of the quote unquote backups that are stepping into starting roles, he's easily the most proven commodity. So I do think there's going to be a ton of chalk there.
I do have one thing on this though. Felton, the backup running back. I mean, they like that kid. So I mean, I don't know if Hunt's going to get like super like this massive usage. He's going to get a bump, yes, but I mean, Felton, he's not a slouch, man. I mean, first game of the year, they were using him a lot. Obviously, when the two are both out there, he's not going to see as much playing time. But it's going to be interesting to track that. And that's one of the reasons why in large field, I don't really want a part of it, just in case, the Felton factor, and just because he's going to be so super high on. So I didn't mean to jump in on you there, but just that's something I kind of noticed having watched a few of the Cleveland Browns games, which I have no idea why I've been watching a few Cleveland Browns games. So,
yeah, glutton for punishment. The funny thing about Felton is it's not even entirely clear if he would get touches ahead of Dearness Johnson, right? So,
nope.
Point being, Kareem Hunt is far and away the most capable running back out of this backfield. But Cleveland also has established a scheme that has heavily featured 2 runners for a couple of years now, right? So certainly there are a couple of lines where Hunt can have his utilization eaten into. He doesn't just absorb all of those Chubb touches, and that definitely offers a bit of risk on this play. Speaking of risky plays, help me because I also really like this game. I think that this might be one of the highest game totals when it's all said and done tomorrow, that may be the lowest ownership apart from Hunt. We've talked for weeks now about how difficult it is to find that correct stacking partner with Kyler Murray. For those that haven't been watching for the last few weeks, the answer is always DeAndre Hopkins, but it's crazy expensive, right? So the asinine line that I want to take on this one is part of me wants to fire up some Baker Hunt stacks and run it back with DeAndre Hopkins. Please, sir, throw me a lifeline and prevent me from making this mistake.
I would never take $1 million off your table, man. Like, come on now. I'm not mad at that. There's just some other games that don't seem as juicy that I right underneath this one that I just want to attack and see if we can't muster up some magic here. So No, I'm not going to try to talk you off that. I could see that. I mean, we've just seen we've seen all year what Arizona's offense does, and we've seen all year what Cleveland's defense has kind of been. And um, I don't mind this being one of the higher totals. I don't know, man. Every time maybe it's just the name Cleveland. It just seems like this game is just not going to go over. So that's something I got to get out of my mind. Somebody needs to talk me into why Cleveland can score some points.
I mean, whomever wants to give it a go needs only to look back a week ago, right? That Chargers defense is certainly not a premier unit in the NFL, but definitely no slouch either. So they've shown it before. Honestly, the thing that gives me pause more than anything else is just how terrible our guy Baker Mayfield looked in those bad weather and wind games at home. I think it was like a 3 or 4 last year where he just absolutely looked like Johnny Manziel. And so to invest in a player that has that outcome on their range is something that I just don't feel great about. And on the other side, I mean, with Kyler's shoulder injury, like Arizona has shown that they run him less when he's injured. Towards the back half of last year, he had a 4 or 5 game stretch where his carry attempts were down to like 3 or 4 per game because he was also nursing his shoulder. And with that wind coming in off of the lake, I mean this one could get ugly real quick. But I don't know if I can quit him. My guy Baker. Maybe it's the Progressive commercials. So point being, I'll probably try to get some sleep, and somewhere during maybe halftime of the England game tomorrow, I'll talk some sense into myself and change these from overweight to just a couple of darts.
There you go. That's funny. I won't have to make that decision, sir. I'll be trying to talk myself onto this game from other games.
Well, here I am back in the chat, and our guy Joe, he's got the support for me, saying do it. Fire up that Baker stack. YOLO away my Sunday, and I just might. And speaking of YOLO, we'll head on down to the next corner of the pawn shop, and that is the sale rack. It's maybe one of the best parts of any visit to the pawn shop. You get to peruse through. These might not be the high ticket items that are on display in the showcase, but it's always worth a quick peek in that sales rack. And if you take a closer look, you can usually walk away with something that you're pretty happy with. And the first game in our sales rack, we've got LA Rams and the New York Football Giants. And again, we have to ask the question that is pivotal in the sales rack. Legit or counterfeit, our guy, Devker, came in for about 3/4 last week once Barkley got injured with that rowdy-looking ankle. He saw 16 carries, 42 yards, and a touchdown. Hauled in 3 of his 4 targets for 16 yards and a second touchdown. So he basically got all of the work out of this Giants backfield. Obviously, Barkley has been ruled out, but all of a sudden, there are some whispers of Brightwell maybe getting a little bit of run. So what's your read on this one, Mike? Is he legit or is he counterfeit?
Is there anything in the middle? I mean, I guess I can't come out here and say counterfeit when I want to, this is the game that I shouldn't play that I'm going to be overweight on. And I'm going to have some lineups with them in there. So, I mean, yeah, the volume's there. I mean, gosh, I mean, the Rams are so good on the defensive line, though. It's really scary. So I guess at the end of the day, it's counterfeit for me because the way I'm attacking the Rams is it doesn't sound smart with Jalen Ramsey, but it's going to be through the air in a run back with our boy Danny Dimes. So yeah. Let's. I guess we can get started on my take on this, right? So we can just burn up the tape afterwards.
Yeah. So for the record, after a bit of waffling, Booker is going to fall in the counterfeit category for Mike. So taking a look at the rest of the game, we are again in that 1 o'clock window. We're looking at a 49.5 point total. This is up a little bit now that Danny Dimes has been announced as available. The Rams are laying 8 points. They opened as 9.5-point favorites. Again, that injury consideration is largely what's driving the change in that line. But we find the Rams with a 28.75 implied total, and the G-men sitting down at 20.75. Run us on through. You kind of teased us how you're looking at this game. What are your thoughts overall, Mike?
All right. Danny Dimes plus Sterling Shepard. Just doesn't seem right. Plus a Darrell Henderson, and give me everybody that I want. Yeah, I mean, God, the Giants are just so frustrating, honestly. I like Jones upside rushing. He's going to be down. I mean, the game script's there for him to, make some things kind of happen here towards the end of the game. Shepard is only 5K. I don't mind that. He's probably going to get peppered with targets. He's probably going to see a lot of Jalen Ramsey. And so, he's probably not going to have any ownership. But I don't know. There's just something unique about this game that just makes me want to get some action here. I'm going to have these in some of my winner take alls because if it does hit, no one else is going to have this. So it is different. Tinder's going to be chalky, so I will have some chalk there along with some Woods. I'm probably going to shy away from Cup in the winner take all. But yeah, I don't know. Just something about the Dimes that maybe it's my Baker Mayfield. I don't know. I just can't get away.
For those of you new to the pawn shop, Mike and I have a soft spot in our hearts for replacement level quarterbacks that are still on their rookie deals. So looking at the game as on the whole, there are a couple of things that I want to kind of unpack a little bit, right? On the Rams side, you mentioned that you're looking at stacking the Giants side of the ball, but I do like how LA is relatively predictable and steady in terms of stacking with Stafford, right? Basically, you can fire Stafford up there and they are going to focus almost all of their targets exclusively. So really the only calculation they need to do is figuring out which of those two is ultimately going to eat. We saw Robert Woods get the grease last week with just how frequently and early he was peppered with targets. But on the other side, Cooper Kupp, I think he still saw 10 or 11 looks in the passing game. So first question there, looking at Robert Woods, do you think that that week or that game last week against Seattle was more of an aberration, that they wanted to appease him and his agent by feeding him early and often in that Seattle game, or do you think that's more of a trend and a sign of things to come?
No, I think that, yeah, I mean, as we kind of go game by game, you're going to see, I mean, 1A and 1B. I mean, Kupp's obviously still going to probably have more of that ceiling. But you just saw last game how Robert Woods can be the winner on a big lineup. So, yeah, the game was coming. It's sad that it was I believe it was on a showdown slate when that happened, if I'm not mistaken.
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday. So, yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get on that before. So I think he's going to be a little more popular. And, yeah, I mean, the Giants are just, not great. So, yeah, I'm not mad at Stafford and Kupp or, a Stafford Henderson Kupp or Stafford Henderson Woods. I don't think a lot of people are going to play that. And there's a chance that, honestly, the Giants just get blown out here. And these guys all get there within 3 quarters.
Yeah, it's definitely on the range, right? We're looking at two teams that are on markedly different ends of the spectrum, right? The Rams are carrying one of the highest implied totals in the slate, and the Giants are carrying one of the lowest, right? So blowout is definitely on the range of outcomes for these teams. I want to go back to the guy that we opened this game with. I am right there with you that Devontae Booker in and of himself is about as counterfeit as it gets. But what I think is interesting about him in this game in particular is coming into the week, it looked like it was going to be Devontae Booker chalk week, right? At his price tag, coming off of a week where he saw almost all of the opportunity out of that backfield. And then as news unfolds, as injuries developed, all of a sudden, Devontae Booker is going to be like 3% owned on this slate. Is that enough reason for you to fire him up in your builds tomorrow, or do you still feel a little queasy before you hit that button?
Yeah, no, it's not for me. I'm gonna get even queasier and go to the Danny Dime side of it. So, I prefer full on mom spaghetti. So yeah, that's just where I'm going. So I get it but it's just not going to be what I'm going to do.
Totally agree with that. So, following that line for Danny Dimes, you mentioned Shepard earlier, and it, at least for me, in his absence, the things that we've seen from Kadarius Toney, I think are the types of things that get people really excited about rostering a player like that. So now that he's back, of the two, where do you think more ownership lies? And who do you have more confidence firing up in this game against the Rams?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tony, obviously now with the price spike up to 5,600 and having the game that he just had, yeah, people are going to want to go to that if they're playing this game at all, which means that I want to go dag and grab that extra $600, and Sterling Shepard's no slouch either. So yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at with it. I'm not completely sold on Tony just yet. I need to see it a few more times, a little more consistency here. And he's got more opportunity with all these guys being out. But for right now, I'm just going to take the Shep, see what happens.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Right, I'll have a couple of shares of Tony out there. I'm more on the Shepherd side, but if nothing else, this is the game where we learn about Kadarius Toney's prospects for the rest of the season. Right, if Shep comes back in and immediately starts gobbling up all that volume, and he becomes an afterthought once more, then enjoy the ride while it was going on. But it's clearly back to Shepard time. If he manages to carve out a role with Shepard available and on the field, I think he might be here to stay. So, if nothing else, one to certainly keep an eye on as we watch the Week 6 slate unfold.
Yep.
And our next game on that Week 6 slate is Cincinnati and Detroit. We got another 1:00 game. This one's carrying a 47-point total. It's down just a tick, half a point. The Bengals are favorites. They're laying 3.5 points to the Lions, giving them a 25.25 implied total, with the Lions sitting at 21.75. So this one is at least setting up to be an offensive showcase for the Bengals. Obviously, Detroit has a lot of top 5 performances in really every or rather for every position in their wake, right? We see team after team just continuing to run the ball down their throat, continuing to do whatever they want in the passing game, and all of it always leads to a last second field goal to win 19-17 somehow. Back-to-back games where the Lions have lost 19-17 on field goals as time expires. So overall on this game, Mike Reed, is this another one that sets up for heartbreak for the Lions, or do you think that they maybe make a bit more of a game of this one?
Yeah, I think this one's going to be a little bit uglier. I do think that Mixon is probably going to be the top play in this game. And yeah, they're just so bad against the run. So fire it up. He's supposed to get all the volume with Pirine being out. So we'll kind of see, the old Joe Mixon where they just give him 5 million touches and see what he does with it, right? So, yeah, that's kind of the piece that I want from this game. Looking at some of the other pieces, I'm not mad at Chase just because he's been so good so early. That price is catching up to him. T. Higgins, 5,300 for his upside. I still think that's too cheap. I mean, he could get 100 and a touchdown. So I do like the Cincinnati side more. Detroit, I mean, good Lord, Jared Goff, 5,100. Like, yeah, could he just do anything? I might have one out of 50 lineups just to say I did it, I guess, is more of the but I mean, he's just too cheap. He's he can run one in. I mean, talked about the same thing we talked about with with the kid from New England. It's just, these guys just have a decent game, especially on a run back where they're trailing. These guys can pay off the 5K. You only need 20 points to really, at this price point, to really go. And if some of those guys up at the 8, 9, the 8, 9K, the Tyreek Hills, they go off for 40, then these are the perfect guys to play them with. So that's the only way these type of plays work, though, is if those top tier guys go bonkers. And we've seen the upside. Some of these receivers this year just be absolutely crazy. So probably not for me, just because he's harder to stack. I don't want to play roulette with their receivers. Swift at 6,300, if he's able to give it a go, I think is a little interesting. But on the whole, I think I'm just looking at Mixon.
I'm completely right there with you. And the funny thing on the Goff side is what we're all wanting from this Lions team is for them to play worse, right? They've managed to kind of hang into these games to where he's not having to attempt 50 passes like he was in week 1, right? We're not seeing a dozen checkdowns to DeAndre Swift as they're trying to make up a 17-point deficit in the fourth, right? So if this team would just quit rallying around Dan Campbell and really play like the sad sacks that they are, I think the fantasy community would commend them. The mix and play, I mean, I am thrilled to fire this dude up. I think we're going to see in the neighborhood of 25 touches plus tomorrow. For whatever reason, he's projected to carry percent ownership. So I think that has a lot to do with that are being thrust into starting positions tomorrow. So going to have a ton of Mixon. DeAndre Swift is a fair choice in my mind. Ultimately, he's kind of like the Jalen Hurts of the running back position. You're going to want to gouge your eyes out for 3.5 quarters, and then you're going to look up when the game's said and done, and all of a sudden he snuck in a couple of garbage time scores. So, definitely something to be had there. I think it's hilarious more than anything else, like just how much the team that does the pricing over at DraftKings is daring people to play someone not named Jamar Chase out of these receiving options in Cincinnati. Like T. Higgins, prior to Jamar Chase, was maybe having one of the best rookie receiver campaigns last year that we've seen in recent memory. And now he's like less expensive than Booker, right? Like, so it's just funny that they're like literally out there like, you want to get a little different with this, but ultimately not a game that I'm making a priority. And so we will move on in our sale rack to the next game, where we have a tilt in the NFC North. We have Green Bay and Chicago kicking off at 1:00. This is a 44-point total. It opened at 46. The Packers are currently laying 6 points as a road favorite, so they're carrying a 25-point total, and Chicago is carrying 19 points. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers and or Devontae Adams are in that midseason form where they can basically do whatever they want. On the other side of the ball, some serious questions around just how much involvement we're going to see from Justin Fields as a passer in this game. He's coming off of back-to-back games with 11 and 12 completions, respectively. So definitely a lot to like on the side. Any game or any players in particular that or maybe any unique or leverage run backs that you want to take a look at on the Chicago side?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too heavily invested in this game. Like we talked about, though, if you have that salary to spend on that quarterback receiver stack that's super cheap, I don't mind throwing Adams in here on that, because his upside is still too crazy, even at this price point at 9K, and no one's going to want to play him in this game environment at 9K. So, yeah, it's a way to get different. I don't want Rodgers this week. I feel like these division games between these two teams are always just so ugly. Justin Fields, they're just trying to protect him. I don't know why they're being so like. It just seems like they don't want to open up the play. They don't want to tailor the playbook to him. I don't know what they're doing with him, honestly. And this game is more of a stay away for me. I know maybe there's a guy in here that you maybe like.
I think the guy that you're trying to bait me into is our guy Khalil Herbert. Obviously, Damian Williams popped up on the Coco list. He has been ruled out of this game. So now that thrusts Khalil Herbert into the starting lineup. We saw him get at least a decent amount of run splitting time with Williams last week and looked all right, right? He was arguably having the better day until Williams snuck one into the end zone. So certainly seems like the path has been cleared for Herbert to have a pretty heavy level of involvement in this game. Because of his price tag sitting at $4,600, he is slated to be one of the chalkier plays on the slate. He's sitting right around 19% ownership. Is that chalk that you're going to eat, or are you looking elsewhere?
Man, am I just doing this wrong this year? I mean, I don't want any part of it. I don't. I mean, I don't know. 4,600, like, I don't even know how to explain it. I mean, I get it. Like, if he scores a touchdown last week, like, he's at what, almost 14 fantasy points. But at 4K, it's like it's not gonna like, if he does the same thing and adds a touchdown at 4,600, it's not gonna beat me. Like, so to me, it's like I don't want to bet for that he's going to get 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that's really the only way he's going to really break the bank on me, and I'm willing to bet against that essentially. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I've got a similar point of view on sort of his productivity and his potential ceiling, right? I think the reason why he's going to carry a bit more ownership has to do with salary relief, right? Like, as we run through some of the games out, there are some very expensive options out there in terms of the players who are projected to score the most points, right? So, to your point, like, 14, 15 points, if you miss out on that, it's not going to kill you. If you get that from a player at 4,600 as opposed to a Booker at 5,400, or maybe someone that you spent up a little bit even more for, I think that salary relief is where there's a bit of an edge. I'll have some shares out there. I'm not going to feel good about it. It does feel like a trap, but I mean, volume is king in this game. You saw 18 touches last week, and that was barely 55% of the workload. To my point at the top of this game, Justin Fields is completing like a dozen passes a week, so they're obviously going to very heavily feature the ground game. So his range is wide enough to where it could pay off. But this week is just super weird, right? Like, there's so many backup these starting positions. It's kind of a matter of just determining which opportunity you like the most and really planting your flag on that guy. And of the lot, Khalil Herbert's not the guy for me. There's actually someone coming up a little bit later that I feel better about.
Oh, okay. Well, should we move on then? I'm interested.
We call that a tease. And where we move on is to the bargain bin. This is where you always at least want to stop and take a look. More often than not, you're going to be happy if you spend your money elsewhere, but we want to make sure that we at least see what's sitting down there. These are the lowest totals on the game slate, where hopefully you can find a little bit of leverage, maybe some salary relief, a play or two to sort of round out your builds. And the first of that lot, an absolutely thrilling face-off in the AFC South. We have the Houston Texans heading to Indianapolis to face the Colts. This one is carried 43-point over-under. The Colts are favored by 10.5 points, giving them a 26.75 implied total. And the Texans yet again carrying the lowest implied total on the slate at 16.25 point. Mike, how thrilled are you for this game? Where are you going for in this one?
I'm so excited to lock in 80% of my lineups with the Colts defense. Like, man, like, let's go. 3,500, just lock it in. Let's move on. The fighting Davis Mills, it's good times, right? Yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, good Lord, like Jonathan Taylor, I mean, yeah, 6,600. Pittman, I mean, that volume's just been there, 5,500. I mean, so yeah, for me, this is a one-off game on the Colts side, along with their defense. If I'm playing anything from this, I know Cooks, like they just they want him to be great there. I mean, you know it. You follow these guys. I mean, are you playing Cooks?
Not if I don't have to. I mean, based on his price tag, there are so many other options that I would rather fire up. But the question that I have for you is actually one that Joe is echoing in the chat as well. Davis Mills and his long ass neck. We saw him actually look pretty solid last week against a better than average Patriots defense. Do you think that he runs it back and gets more practice squatters onto the fantasy radar in week 6?
The fighting Davis Mills, I will say no. But this is
No.
the kind of game that I was talking about with these other quarterbacks. And so for me, the Davis Mills happens to be the I don't know why the kid's name keeps escaping me. Matt Jones or Matt Jones. That brings back
Mac.
real bad memories. Mac Jones. One of these guys gets a 300 yards, 3 touchdown game. Bam, 27 points at 5K. That's like that's where you pair him with the right receiver. You're good. I just don't think it's Davis Mills this week. I think it's one of these other kids. I could see Goff doing it. I could see Mac Jones doing it. Eventually, if Chicago ever opens up the playbook, Justin Fields is probably going to win someone $1 million. I mean, it just depends on when they play the Vikings, if they open up the playbook at all. I mean, it's going to happen at some point. It's just I'm just not playing the Texans, man. It's nothing to spite you.
I am unfortunately a Texans fan, and I am not playing the Texans either. So no spite or slight taken. What I do want to take a look at is on the Colts side of the ball. I mean, is this about as close to a Jonathan Taylor lock button as we're going to see? You mentioned firing up your 80% of your lineups. I'm a big fan of running back that correlation with the running back alongside that defense. Do you think that Jonathan Taylor gets it done in another soft matchup against the Texans, or do you think that maybe the blowout kind of eats away at his upside?
No, I think him and Mixon are my two, and Henderson are probably my 3 favorite plays at running back. Even over Hunt. Like they're just all around that same price point and that same tier. For me, that's just where I want to go this week. So yeah, I do think it's a pretty easy game for him, and he should be able to get there.
And while you are on the Jonathan Taylor train alongside me, I'm going to have a ton of exposure to him. I'll be overweight. Paul's coming in from Facebook. He wants to know if Carson Wentz can run it back. You feel safe with him putting up a similar performance to what we saw on Monday night, or should Paul look elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not playing it. I'm not mad at it, but I'm just going to stick with the run game and the Colts defense here. What are your thoughts on Carson Wentz this week?
Yeah, the thing that gives me pause about Carson Wentz is just how much throwing he's going to have to do. I mean, anyone who listened to the show in the weeks past knows that my position is one where we can largely expect the Texans to be down by 10 points for the majority of the game. Obviously, Carson Wentz has the flaws in his game to where if they don't have to, this Colts offensive staff is not going to try to expose those soft spots in his game, right? So I don't think we see the volume that we saw from Carson last week. And once the game's out of hand, it's basically going to be the Jonathan Taylor / Marlon Mack for some reason show as they salted away. So, with his price tag looking somewhere else, if the Colts come out and they establish their lead by way of the pass game, then he can certainly get there. We've got the extra kicker of the Texans killer T.Y. Hilton being activated off of the pup. So he could actually be in this game. And if he is, expect him to score upwards of 9 touchdowns as he has in every game that he's ever faced the Texans. But apart from that nonsense coming to fruition, I think you're better off looking elsewhere, Paul.
I agree. Let us move on.
We will look elsewhere. Our next game in the bargain bin is those Minnesota Vikings heading to Carolina to face off against the Panthers. This is a 1 o'clock game featuring a 45.5 point total. It's actually come down by 2 points since it opened. The Vikings themselves are 2.5 point favorites. They actually opened so we've seen about a 4-point slide in their favor. They're sitting with a 24 point implied total, and the Panthers carrying 21.5. Mike, you just mentioned teams opening up the playbook and taking advantage of this soft Minnesota defense. Anyone you're looking at for these Panthers or in the run back on the Viking side?
Yeah, I think DJ Moore's a little interesting here. 7,300. This guy just seems to find the end zone every week, so it's a little interesting to me. Dalvin Cook, 7,700. I mean, anytime he's under 8K, I mean, you got to look at him. So an interesting play there. I know he's not part of my top 3 that I'm going to, but I'm going to have some shares of him in larger field tournaments. He's not going to be that popular, even at a depressed ownership. Other than that, man, I mean, like Jefferson's price is up there. I mean, 8K. If I'm playing some of these like crazier stacks in large field with, I might run it back with a Jefferson. But overall, I'm not really excited about this game. I don't know. Is there any excitement to you in this game?
The most exciting thing about this game for me is our guy Chuba Hubbard. He is, as has been put so gracefully before, the king of the dipshits. He is the one of the backups that I am most excited about firing up. He's sitting at 5,900, and he's coming off of a game where he saw nearly 30 touches. Our guy Chuba Hubbard put up better than 21 points last week and did not get into the end zone. This week against the Vikings, I think that scoring upside is there to go along with the volume. And I, as we talked about in pre-show, love the idea of firing up Chuba Hubbard. And I hate the fact that I can't bring myself to not have a correlated run back. So be sweating over some Cook, some Justin Jefferson, or some Adam Thielen. And I'm going to find myself with a little mini stack on this game and giving those roster spots to players that probably should have gone to someone else. But this is the boat that I live in, and I don't know if I can change these flawed things about my personality.
I'm trying to change you, man. Don't play Chuba this week. Minnesota's terrible, though. I get it. My man here, 30 touches, just creeped over the 100-yard barrier. If he runs for 99 instead of 101 yards, he finishes with 18. He's not going to kill you. So, yeah, if he gets a touchdown and he gets all this volume, yeah, I mean, good times, right? But your boy Darnold, when he gets closer to the end zone, likes to go ahead and walk it in. So something you have to pay attention to. But
those days done.
Yeah, I get
that
it.
was reserved for when Matt Rule was trying to hide Christian McCaffrey. Now that it's Chuba Hubbard there, they're going to feature this man for the stallion that he is. We don't see Sammy Darnold stealing that goal line work anymore.
And maybe it's just because he played for Oklahoma State that I'm a little salty right now, and that's why I'm not going to roster him. Maybe I'll feel different in the morning. I'll probably feel worse about it, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, I get why you're doing it, but I'm just gonna spend up a little bit more to my guys that I really like. So
perfectly fair. The price tag does make it a bit hard to stomach. So understand where you're coming from there. And speaking of things that are hard to stomach, our last game of the Week 6 slate, we have the Las Vegas Raiders heading to Mile High to face off against the Broncos. This is a 44-point total with the favored by 4 points. That gives them an even 24-point implied total. And the Raiders coming off of a slew of controversy and a head coaching change carry a 20-point implied total. Michael, which of these players are you building around in Week 6?
Absolutely none. Darren Waller's under 7K now, so I would think a new coach would just be like, throw that guy the ball 15 times. But there's not a lot to like in this game. And watch it go 42-38. So, it's just not for me. I mean, is there anything that sticks out to you in this game?
I think the Waller line is probably the most interesting thing, right? Like, this might be the cheapest price point that we see him carry all year, and it's kind of like a paint by numbers thing, right? Like, you've got less than a week to against a pretty solid defense in this Broncos team. Yeah, we're gonna pepper our best player with targets. So I do think we see a bounce back game from Waller. I do think that he returns value relative to his depressed price tag. I don't know if I'm gonna get there because I'm probably gonna be looking to spend elsewhere, right? Like, if I'm gonna be up in that neighborhood, I'll probably just want to go all the way up to Travis Kelce, or look to use tight end as a point of cost savings. On the Broncos side, I mean, it feels like Cortland Sutton is really starting to come into his own, and get into a rhythm with Teddy Two Gloves. Again, I'm not really going to look to play him naked. I'm not going to want to spend up to get the run back with Waller. So, there'll be a couple of spots where I have sort of a last spot that I need to fill, and if their price tag lines up, I'll probably take a look at primarily those two guys. But apart from that, I'm out of my way to roster anyone from this game in particular.
Yeah, I'm not really either. So I might have like one Waller.
The old one Waller. Well, that concludes the Week 6 slate. Before we head out, we did have one more question come in. Our guy Kyle, member of the Going for Two Live family, wants to know your thoughts on Van Jefferson. Not exactly a min-price player, but firmly in that punt category. You mentioned liking this game in particular. What are your thoughts on old Van?
Yeah, I always like Van as a way to be different with the Rams. The other 2 weeks ago, he had the touchdown and almost 80 yards or so, and I was in 10th place with him in my lineup, and Yahoo, for some reason, on that last Robert Woods touchdown, went ahead and said Van Jefferson scored the final touchdown, which would have gave me a bonus and a second touchdown and vaulted me into second place, which did not end up happening, as I did the early celebration and saw on Red Zone the actual catch being made by Robert Woods. So I've crossed Van Jefferson off of my list for the foreseeable future, but I do like to play at 3,400.
Yahoo, do you see what you've done? You've taken a viable over-the-top player out of this man's player pool. How dare you? Yeah, I'm right there. I'm right there with you on Van. Right, like this. I feel like the collective, we don't really think about Los Angeles in this way, but forever and ever, this has been an offense under Sean McVay that has featured three prominent pass catchers, right?
Yeah.
And Van Jefferson is that third option, right? So he's certainly not quite to the level of Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp yet, but we are seeing pretty significant time on the field basically every week. He's right around, if not well over, in a snap share. He's seeing several targets week in and week out, 4 last week, 6 in each of the 2 prior weeks. So certainly has the opportunity, and the way they use him in the field, if he's going to haul in any of those targets, it's probably going to be for a 50-plus yarder where he's got a good shot at getting in the box. So all of that for essentially min price of the position. Definitely something that I'm not mad at if you want to fire it up, my guy, Kyle. And that looks to be the last question that we have in the chat. Been a busy night on these chat streets. Appreciate everyone chiming in with their endorsement and support of my Baker plays and with your questions as the night has gone on. As we close out, Mike, do you want to tell everyone where the people can find you?
Yeah, you can find me in the Twitter sphere at MCHolland34. Also, you can find me either at the top or very bottom of leaderboards every Saturday, Sunday at the DFS Avenger. You can also find me if you want to chat some Longhorn sports, which basketball season's around the corner. It is at Bacon and Egg Show.
Right on. Yeah, we're getting all the compliments flowing in. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Joe. Been a ton of fun tonight. For anyone that wants to check out my work, the easiest way to find it is to follow me on Twitter. I am at FantasyNav, and the DFS Pawn Shop is a proud member of the Going for Two Live network. So if you're not already following, definitely get on that YouTube channel and hit subscribe. Follow them on Twitter at going for two underscore com, excuse me. Kyle jumped in. We've got a lot of really good content creators on the network. Ton of fun coming at you every single night of the week. So get out there, hit the subscribe button, follow us all on Twitter. And with that, we will see you for week